welcome our own member, our Monday member, Ed Cunningham, Chief, Mr. Cunningham, however you want to address him.
So thank you everyone for allowing me to take a few minutes and talk about what's going on here with the police department. Just to give a little update, one of the programs that I had talked about before with the Second Chance PA program, we got slowed down a little bit with COVID. The police departments and the ambulances weren't making as many contacts, so we weren't getting as many people enrolled in the program. But now that things are starting to get a little bit back to normal, I guess the bad side of it is that we are having more contacts and we are coming in contact with more people. But the good side is we're getting more and more enrollment back into the Second Chance program. So we are starting again to direct people towards the addiction recovery help that they so badly need. And the program itself is still growing. We only have 1 or 2 departments left in Lancaster County until we have partnered with, and then we will have partnered with every police department in the whole county. So something that started off here small, just with 2 police departments in this little corner of the county, has now grown to the entire county, and we're starting to have conversations in Dauphin and Lebanon counties as well. So this is something that's really growing, where the police are partnering to help the community and to help the people in need. One of the newest programs that we have that we're starting here in Elizabethtown and with Elizabethtown and Northwest Regional Police Departments is a partnership with Advos Mediation and Restoration or Restorative Practices Services. They're based in Lancaster City, but they're coming up to our area to help us work with our citizens and our community members to help any way that we can to bring more tools to the police officers to help them help our citizens and our residents with quality of life issues that they may be facing. Advos's mission is to transform conflict and build community through face-to-face dialogue programs. They are, and I don't remember, Chris Weldon and Chris Fitz are the guys who kind of run Advos, and they can do a lot better talking about their history and the way that 2 previous separate entities joined together a few years ago to create, I believe it was 2015, to create Advos and really start working towards this in our community, bringing peace to our community. What we're looking at with this partnership is to really work to bring mediation and restorative justice services to this area, to allow people to work together outside of the criminal justice system to really bring some sort of closure to a harm that was committed. We have, you see that this Venn diagram, how the community works with the people who were affected, the victims, and the people who created the harm, the offenders. You bring this whole together to bring healing for the harm that was committed. What the program is going to do is it's going to start with training. We're going to be training volunteers in this area. We also brought on the college into the partnership. We're going to be looking for some college students to help receive training as mediators. We're also going to be training the police officers in how to recognize cases that can be helped with mediation. Once we get that training done, then we will start bringing cases to the mediation process, where the trained mediators will sit down with both sides of an issue. And we might be looking at neighborhood disputes, property lines, landlord-tenant disputes, maybe family disputes, things like that. We're going to be dealing with or bringing those kind of cases to mediation so that each side can sit down and talk about what's causing the problem, why are they having this issue with each other, and try to work together to come up with a way to either simply just get along with each other, or better, to solve the problem and start working together. Um, there are plans in the works to work with the district justice's office, with Judge Miller, to get more into the restorative justice piece, with the more serious cases that need to enter into the criminal justice system for documentation purposes, but that don't need to end up in fines or jail time or criminal records, things like that. That part of the plan is still in the planning process, so there's not a whole lot I can talk about with that right now. Basically, one of the ways that we got to doing this is looking at the whole system of the circular system of what happens when one person causes harm to another. And you see, you have that conflict or that violation, which when you enter just simply into the criminal justice system, you have the exclusion, the punishment. You get either taken to jail, or your friends see you dealing with the police. And even beyond the punishment that is imposed by the criminal justice system, you also have the punishment that is created by the community, because everybody looks at that offender differently. That leads to some isolation and depression, and may lead to even other problems, which then starts a whole vicious cycle of, once you get into this cycle, then you think that you're no good, and you continue to commit violations against your neighbors and your family. Looking at the restorative justice piece and the mediation piece, if there's a restorative response where the police can bring a system to the neighbors who are arguing with each other, to allow them to sit down, each person takes accountability and takes responsibility for their part of the argument to help to build the relationship, then next time there's some sort of an issue, the neighbors know how to work together to work it out, rather than getting into a fight and calling the police. So what's going to happen is that police officers will still respond to 911 calls the way we always do. When we get a call about an incident, whether it's a neighbor dispute, a property line, a family dispute, landlord tenant, something like that, we will go to those calls the way we always have. But we now have another tool that in our toolbox that we can offer to help and help these people work through their problems. We will fill out a quick referral form, send it to Advos, and within 2 business days, a mediator will contact both parties and start to set up how they're going to handle this case, and how they're going to sit down, schedule the mediation, and work together to come to a mutually agreeable outcome. At the end of that mediation service, then the case manager will report back to the police, let us know that this case has been favorably resolved, let us know basically what that agreement is, and then at that point, then the police no longer have to have any kind of an involvement in this case, because the both sides were able to work it out together. What kind of incidents are we looking at? Initially, phase 1, what we have going on right now, is just going to be non-criminal incidents. Property lines, noise and nuisance, landlord-tenant, the neighborhood disputes, the things that people will call 911 to have the police try to come out and help them work it out, but that don't rise to the level of criminal charges, and that the only way that you would be able to handle it would be to go to the magistrate's office and sue your neighbor. Rather than that being the only option, we'll have the option of putting it into the mediation system, where you'll be able to go sit down with your neighbor with a trained mediator and work through the problem. The problem that we've come to historically is that cops are really good negotiators, but we don't have the time to sit down and work through the issues back and forth and, sit down at the table and go back and forth and this is my side and that's my side and my understanding. We don't have the time to or the specific training to do that kind of mediation. So by being able to refer it to the Advos partnership, we can have a trained mediator sit down and work through that. As I mentioned, phase 2 that we're still trying to build will be for the lower level criminal incidents like vandalism, graffiti, threat, bullying, things like that, where we will still still do the report, refer it to the magistrate's office, and the magistrate will be much more involved in making sure that that restorative justice piece gets handled. What we're not doing are violent crimes, family domestic assaults, any really high-level violent crimes. Who benefits from this partnership? Obviously, definitely the community will benefit, because it's just another way that the police are able to help and solve these quality of life neighborhood issues. And we'll be able to, the residents will be able to get a sense of satisfaction that justice has been served, because they will actually feel like their side of the story has been heard and understood. Definitely the police department will benefit, because it'll help us improve our police and community relations. We won't have to keep going to these calls and saying there's nothing that we can do to help you, because that definitely impacts our relationship with the community. It allows us to focus on what our real goal is, preventing crime and helping the community to help themselves. And depending on what kind of a case we're talking about, when you look at the long-term involvement that the police department has with some of these cases, we're talking some of these incidents are things that have been going on for months or years. And when you look at the staffing and the time that the officers put into it and the time that the residents put into it, we may be talking about $2,000 or more per case that's being freed up from taxpayer dollars and also out of your pocket from dealing with these problems with neighbors. So what we're looking for from the community is definitely work with your department. And in the next slide, I'll give you phone numbers, but we're looking for people who are interested in getting the training to become mediators. If you're interested in doing that, let me know. I'll pass your name around. Also, if you know of neighbors who could benefit from a mediation type of thing, or if you're experiencing something with yourself and one of your neighbors or a former friend or something like that, let us know. Get in touch with me. We'll make a referral. We'll get it set up. And then also Advos' community invested model. I'm not here doing a fundraising for Advos. That's their job. But if you look them up, they were participating in some of these Great Give and some of these other programs, and they could definitely use some support. So if you have any questions, have any issues, or have any ideas or suggestions, please get a hold of me or Mark Mayberry from Northwest Regional. If you're looking to volunteer as a mediator or to offer financial support, Chris Wendon is the executive director from Advos, and they also their website. They have a contact me, and they have information how to get in touch with them there. So that's all I have for my presentation. If anybody has any questions.
Chief Cunningham, this is Marty Thomas Brumé. Hey, I think this is great. I guess for me to make it work, you really need the buy-in of the frontline police officer to sell it to the person in conflict. Typically, when someone calls the police, they want you to fix their problem, and they don't want to fix it themselves. And mediation sort of requires them to fix it themselves. So I guess my question is, how committed are your police officers to really sell this to the community? I mean, they're the ones that are going to make it work.
As it stands right now, the officers they haven't received that initial training yet. They are supportive of the idea, but I don't have that 100% buy-in because they don't know the program yet. However, we did, between us and Northwest Regional, we had great buy-in for the Second Chance program. And I know that the connection that these officers have to this community is very strong. So I anticipate that we'll have very good buy-in, because it's really, really frustrating to us when we have to come to your house and say, my only option is to either write a citation for disorderly conduct, which is then you're going to have to take time off and testify in court. Your neighbor's going to get a fine, and that makes it worse between you. Or to tell you to go to the magistrate's office and sue your neighbor, which is going to take time and money and, again, make things worse. Now, when it'll be less frustrating when we say, if you're open to this, then here's a way where you can make it better instead of making it worse.
I have a question. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I'm 100% supportive of this. I've known about conflict mediation for many years now. And Chris Fitz is a good friend from way, way back. Now, once this gets started and there's mediation in the borough, where would be the physical location, or might be the physical location, where you actually have a sit down for this to happen?
Thank you, Ralph. I forgot to mention that we actually do have a commitment from Advos, and that's why we're recruiting volunteer mediators from this area. We have a commitment that the mediation will be held here in Elizabethtown or in the immediate area. Now, obviously, if it's more convenient for both parties to go over to Mountjoy Township somewhere or something, but it's going to be in this area. One of the first things when Chief Mayberry and I started talking to Chris was, we're not sending our people down to Lancaster City to do this, because I can guarantee if I come to your house and say, I have this great program, but you have to drive down to the city and find somewhere to park, and you're not going to go for it. So that was one of the very first commitments we got from them, was that unless there's an agreement from all three parties, the mediator and both sides of the story, unless there's an agreement to do it somewhere else, it'll be right here in the borough somewhere. And we're still trying to pick those locations. And what we want to do is the mediators will have a list of available locations, maybe somewhere at the college, maybe some at the high school. And Michelle, I haven't even called you about that yet, but maybe here at the police station, or maybe at a coffee shop or something. There will be a list of participating locations where we can have these sit downs, but it's not going to be down in the city.
Chief Ed, this is Don. What kind of
partnering with you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just said, Chief, I look forward to partnering with you.
Thank you.
So Chief Ed, what sort of security measures are in place when there is a meeting place and when the three parties arrive? I'm picturing if someone's concealing a knife and so on.
These are not going to be or at least the hope is, the plan is that these are not going to be the type of cases where we would anticipate there being any kind of violence. When the mediator gets together and talks to the parties, if the issue is that hot that we have to think about security for the location, that might not be a good case for mediation. We may have to touch some other bases before we get to mediation. When we get later in the process, phase 2, when we start doing the restorative justice stuff, there will probably be a police officer involved in those cases a little bit more. So there will be a police officer on scene. But these phase 1 cases, if it's that bad that we think we need security, it's probably not a good case for mediation.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. Any last questions?
Chief, I have a comment. Last evening, there were 2 officers, ironically enough, that had to come to my house because of a neighbor issue. And Officer Real, just to give him some kudos, he did bring up this mediation program. He said he didn't know too much about it, but he said it may be something that we would consider with myself and my neighbor. So your officers are talking about it, which is nice to hear. Excellent.
Thank you. Like I said, I know we just haven't done the training yet, but we have been talking about it. And it's funny, I just read that report about an hour ago, but I wasn't going to say anything about it, but
the presentation was meant for me.
Michelle's a frequent flyer. Or her neighbor's a frequent flyer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ed, for coming to last minute notice. I really appreciate it. And if there's any other members out there that have a story to tell or a mission trip they went on and they want to tell everybody, please reach out to me and we'll get you on the calendar.
Well, Chief Ed, in closing, a big thanks to you for this message of additional hope to anyone who's in a hard place, especially in these times when mediation is huge. And of course, we also appreciate all that you do to keep our community safer. Everybody unmute and let's give him a big thank you. Applause.
Thank you.
Best as we can. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend, and the bell rings, and we'll see you next time.